Hello and welcome to Avasant's Digital Forum, enabling business transformation through digital customer journeys. This event is in partnership with HCL Technologies. My name is Andriana Albert and I will be your MC today. Avasant is thrilled to have partnered with such an innovative organization to bring an hour of thought leadership and expert insights to our audience. Thank you again to HCL for your partnership. As we aim to make these sessions as interactive as possible, we encourage you to utilize the chat and Q&A features on your dashboard to pose questions to the panelists. They will be answering them live throughout the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Libby Roney. Libby is the former CIO of Chanel and Kmart Fashion. She is currently an Avasant Distinguished Fellow. Libby, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. You know, in the late 80s, we began talking to our business partners about business process re-engineering. We learned the term value chain. Michael Porter discusses this in his influential 1985 book, Competitive Advantage. We were very careful in selling this idea to our business partners, making sure they understood this was a never-ending journey, and the journey is still continuing in 2021. Digital customer experience is the sum of all online interactions a customer has with your brand. It covers the value chain of marketing, sales, customer service, commerce, and their back-end processes and systems. It's the customer journey from acquiring the customer to provisioning and retaining them. Digital customer experience is inseparable from customer experience, which includes all interactions the customer has with your brand in the physical world. If customer experience is about empathy, building trust, and the human connection, then digital customer experience is the online expression of these efforts. Data-driven customer experience and hyper-personalization is the key to revenue growth. Use cases around e-commerce, omni-channel, personalization, and customer experience automation are at the top of the list. 64% of all CRM projects are about enhancing the digital customer experience. The top technologies in demand include cloud-enabled CRM, intelligent voice assistants, augmented and virtual reality, social CRM, artificial intelligence and machine learning, mobile CRM, customer analytics, Internet of Things, and robotic processing automation. COVID-19 drove new and more aggressive business behavior in driving business. E-commerce share of global retail increased from 14% in 2019 to 17% in 2020. Approximately 70% of e-commerce businesses shifted their payment methods to mobile wallets. Kroger's grocery digital sales grew 116% in the last fiscal year. CVS's utilization of telemedicine increased 600%. Apple Pay accounted for 90% of US mobile wallet debit transactions in 2020. And 10% of all spend at point of sale was using digital mobile wallets. COVID-19 is also driving outsourcing in customer experience and customer relationship management services, such as B2B, B2C, marketing automation, customer experience optimization, and customer service. 80 to 90% of service providers have seen growth in demand for digital channels. Companies are experiencing challenges, though, when trying to implement digital customer journeys. The biggest challenge is organizational silos and no defined customer experience strategy. Second is the lack of well-defined goals and objectives, as well as the lack of clear metrics. Next is the current organizational structure and operating models may not work. So engineering the old process methodologies may be necessary. In addition, lack of technology integration, data security, and lack of data governance may need to be addressed. And of course, as always, the distrust among employees toward technology and not wanting to change the ways that they work. I think now we're going to go to the panel and they can introduce themselves. Andriana?
Okay, let's start with Fred. Fred, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me and having me. My name is Fred Pond. I am a retired Chief Information Officer. My last role was at Columbia Sportswear, the outerwear footwear company based in Portland, Oregon. I am also an Avasant fellow, as is Libby. I have been a fellow for a couple of years, and in that role provide guidance to Avasant customers, to their research, and to sit in on events like today's.
Thanks, Fred. Shrin?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Shane Alipana. I'm currently a principal and transition practice lead with Avasant. My background is in manufacturing, retail, and CPG industry. I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to an engaging conversation and questions.
Thank you. Hi, Rachel. It's great to have you.
Hey, it's nice to be here. I'm Rachel Powers. I'm actually located out on the West Coast in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am a Senior Vice President, Digital Consulting with HCL, and happy to be here and to talk through and answer questions today.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Back to you, Libby.
Okay, so let's start with the questions. First one, today we're going to talk about end-to-end business transformation. But first, I think it's important that we understand the why. Why is this transition necessary and more important than ever?
Maybe I'll take that, Libby. So from my standpoint, from all the research and that we're doing on the Avasant side and the clients that we are dealing with, obviously, the change is not an option anymore. So especially after COVID, as our CEO refers to, COVID was the best digital transformation officer. That basically forced all the companies to really think hard about where they want to take their business, how they're going to basically adapt to changing customer needs. And it has changed. All customer needs, the client experience has changed within the last 2.5 years. Customers are more educated than ever. They want more and better experience throughout all the omni-channel, or what I call omni-commerce experience, whether they are somewhere in person at the store or they are shopping online on the web or on the mobile. They want the same experience and they want more customized and personalized experience. So some companies, let's take Amazon, for example, they were ahead of the game. They were already doing online ordering, payment, and delivery, and fast within 2 hours delivery and all of that, right? But there were other companies that they are still catching up. For instance, Target and Walmart, they started doing like curbside pickups, and they started doing faster delivery services. So those are the companies. Basically, some companies are catching up, and the reason behind that is if they don't, it's going to become to the point either you evolve or you die. So that's where companies are heading at. And for example, take a quick service restaurant business. What do customers really want? They want to be able to, I'm one of the customers, let's say, I want to be able to go to my mobile phone, order, make the payment, and get the delivery left at the door. Sometimes people don't want to interact with any human being, right? They just want to do everything online. But sometimes there are drive-thrus. How enabled and how efficient are the drive-thrus are at this restaurant? Do we see like 20 cars lined up and we can really get through them fast? And how these quick service restaurants are evolving to basically adapt to these customer needs that have changed in the last 2 years or so. And again, I'll kind of close out with this, is it's not an option anymore. So why is that companies have to do it, right? And either they have to do it or they don't really get in front of their game in the industry that they are in.
Rachel or Fred, do you have any thoughts?
Just to build on to what she was saying, I think that the word transformation is used a lot these days. And quite simply, when you look at the why, it's one key reason is that change is inevitable. And throughout the last year and a half, we were already well underway before the word COVID even was present, before the crisis started last year. But what we do see is a consistent theme, and that is a theme for needing to help companies to be able to generate and unlock new value, new opportunities, create new growth, much of some of the items that you were just talking about. And sometimes by creating new or it's evolving existing products and services, right? I mean, now it's curbside at Target, for example, or it's by delivering new efficiencies. And creating this kind of growth really requires reinvention. It's an agile reinvention. So what is being done today is for evolving and rethinking business and operating models. It's not only what you build, but why and how, but also how the company operates in order to enable that change.
That's great. So
this Fred, I've got a couple of comments. I think both, I agree completely with Sharon and Rachel. But I want to also add just a little bit to it that I think, the momentum that started even before COVID the gas pedal got pushed to the floor during COVID, and businesses realized they had no choice and they pivoted, and people are doing jobs differently than they may not have wanted to, but they're able to do their jobs in different ways than they were. And that's going to help with the transition within a company. Before COVID, I think people were more resistant to change. COVID forced every employee to rethink their job, rethink what they're doing with it and where it is. And I think that opens the door now for an easier jump into these changes. And I think, as we go through it, I think one of the key call outs from this is really end to end is the key. It's not just what the customer sees, but it's how everything behind it is going to feed into that customer experience, all the way back to supply chains in Asia and distribution within local networks and things like that.
Fred, that's a great transition into question number 2, which is when we talk about thank you for that. When we talk about transformation, there are several components involved. Thinking about end to end, what are the components necessary for a complete end-to-end transformation? And I know this is a big question, so I'm hoping you can kind of bring it to life from your own experience. Who would like to start this one?
So I'll jump in.
Thank you, Rachel.
This is a really critical question, because I think one of the big questions that we tend to anchor every project around or program around or activity is, how do you ensure that the transformation goals and objectives support the business strategy? So how do we drive value? How do we build and sustain that? And so one example that we recently worked with is at HCL is we work with a large parts manufacturing company. And there we work with them to really create kind of this Amazon-like, it's a new model. It's a new way of interacting with this particular company, hitting in a completely different market. But Amazon-like experience around the best parts tailored to the company's brand, which is really about high quality, reliable, powerful, genuine parts. And then bringing in this end-to-end understanding of the journey of the personas, right? Truck mechanics to retired couples that are driving across the country to boaters that are hitting the lake for the summer. And so it really required a holistic approach in order to really create that better experience, to really be able to close the gaps and exceed expectations, not only internally with the client, but then also with customers and the end users that ultimately, it's those moments out on the lake that are really going to, make a difference, or being able to move materials from one point to another across the country. And so having that investment in customer experience and not just kind of out of the box cookie cutter functionality. And so what that kind of starts when you start building upon these different layers, it's not just one or two things, and that it's really about that transformation as a business and a technology journey. And so they really have to be interlocked together, as well as there's another layer, which is that cultural dimension. So kind of what you were showing in your slide earlier, right? Dozens of siloed organizations. Many companies struggle with this. And they have to align from marketing to pricing to taxes, supply chain to customer service. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the results to take this 1,000 products to 50,000 products online to create new revenue from products that may have been only sold to through a third party or at a physical retail location is now available to a much broader population.
That's great. I'll just add a couple points to what Rachel said. Rachel, I think culture is one of the big ones, right? I mean, Fred mentioned it as well. The digital transformation now requires restructuring the team, aligning the company and employees at the higher level with the vision and all of that. And a couple of things I'll add to that. Everything, including digital transformation, any program starts really from strategy, right? What is a strategy? What you want to achieve at the end, and then how you're going to get the entire leadership buy-in, how agile the leadership team is, and are they aligned with the vision, how are they going to support it from different perspectives. From there, I believe the next important thing, again, from my perspective, is data strategy, right? Well, how much data you have, what is your data strategy, what is the technology behind it, and what infrastructure you have in place to support it. Do you have everything on-prem, or you're on cloud, you're halfway to cloud? So that makes a big difference when it comes to analyzing that data to help with digital transformation. So any really innovation, any optimization processes, any transformation of experience requires data to make informed decision and have an insightful actionable items, basically. And the last thing I want to add is, how do we measure the outcomes, right? So what KPIs, what measure we put in place to see if we have actually got to a place that we plan to, right? And by measuring that outcome, how quickly companies can pivot if necessary, and how, again, just goes back being agile from, again, leadership level all the way down to employee level, how quickly we can change, we can adapt, and how quickly we can pivot. So measuring outcomes is one of the big components throughout any program and digital transformation as well.
And on that note, we do have a good question from the audience about leadership. So they said, leadership alignment is a critical component of delivering effective business transformation. To what extent do you feel that COVID has been a catalyst in driving greater leadership alignment? Whoever wants to take that one. Maybe Rachel? That sounds like a good one for you.
One of the things that I saw was this, the momentum last year that happened of bringing people together around a common purpose and a mission that really it would make a difference for our customers, for our clients, and for their end users, for their employees. And so I think that when you're kind of looking at it from a, it's change isn't easy, right? And having something kind of happening around you, but most companies, they have a plan, they have a strategy, it makes sense, but sometimes just can't make the change. And so by actually building in those those organizational capabilities, it's going to make that change much simpler and actually bring people together on that journey faster. And that actually helps build a much more resilient organization that supports a continuous change, as well as the design principles that you have integrated throughout that. And it's a cultural shift, right? It's embedded with new ways of working, new processes, new behaviors, and it's the foundation of your business transformation journey. It's part by, listening, and we were all at a very critical moment and understanding and then fostering collaboration from the top down. You're going to be on a much better path, or you'll be well on your way to long-term success.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Rachel. That's just like, yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Fred, anything you want to add?
I guess one thing is just leadership really does have to pivot, and they had to pivot last year and think differently and how they can make those strategy alignments and changes within that leap of where they're going. And I think structurally, if you don't build a compensation model that is going to be different to lead people down these kind of changes, you won't get them all in the boat and they will not move forward. So it gets into all aspects of how leadership and organizational structure and compensation is going to help drive these changes, because they're painful. And if there isn't the incentives that hit really top to bottom in the organization, it will fracture and it will not stay on track.
Okay. So, one of the critical elements obviously is data, which Sharon had mentioned before. And in my experience back in the day, we use data marts. So for example, if we were implementing a warehouse management system, we would build a specific data mart for the warehouse team to use to support them. And then we'd roll up whatever relevant data was necessary to the executive summary data mart so that the executives could see what they needed to see. That was then. So how is that data, what would that data be? How would that data be used today is really the question. The same data.
Sharon, I think
this
this is a
Fred.
question for you.
This Fred, I'll take a first shot at this. I mean, data has changed dramatically, and I totally agree with you, Libby. In the old days, we did that, and we had small little data marts, but they were all siloed around the different functions of the business, whether it was finance or operations or warehousing or those kind of things. And things have changed so much with big data solutions and the ability to use ML and AI over those in modern technologies that I think everybody has had to throw away all their old things and figure out how to break down the silos and bring things into a more modern footprint, cloud-based, big data. There's a dozen different great solutions out there around those kind of things, and be able to get it exposed, whether it be from any of the aspects of the business or outside factors from, web traffic or marketing campaigns and all those things. You have to get it all in one place where then you can turn some of the power of business analytics, AI, machine learning to discover what's there and get some visibility so that you can make better decisions. There is so much data and there is so much knowledge in it that we are still figuring out how to really harvest it.
Yeah, I'll just add to what just Fred mentioned. I think that's a great point. Companies have more data than they can actually leverage, use, and come up with meaningful reports, dashboards, that really analytics that can really help drive some of the decisions. But to your point, Fred, big data lakes, they allow to companies to streamline this data, right? How are they going to get them from all the legacy systems, different platforms, different sources of data? And like you mentioned, social media data, that's now one of the big sources of data about customer behavior, the shopping experiences, and the things that they like and they don't like, and how you're going to bring that into this big, now we call it big data or data lake, but it used to be data mart in the past. And then how you're going to apply machine learning, artificial intelligence to analyze this data much faster than a human can do. It's much more accurate, and a lot that goes far behind what the analyst and all of that can do to basically aggregate all the data, to cleanse the data, and then come up with meaningful analytics that will help drive better customer experience for the companies, basically allow companies to enhance the customer experience, personalize them, and basically help throughout this digital transformation journey.
Yeah, something that's kind of a little different topic, which is around the different types of signals that are going to be able to give you a better view of your customer to increase loyalty, but also accelerate that business impact that we've been talking about. And so one of the things that I found really intriguing is that during the height of the crisis last year, there was an uptick in human interactions. And so by looking at ordering out data, at how many people were booking a table, and looking at open table data, restaurant data, taxi usage, biking usage, search data, mobility data, you're able to get a much clearer picture in unknown ways because of being able to supplement the traditional data sources in order to, and what this did is it supplemented it, and it helped to be able to predict future cases, at the early onset by accounting for a really key element, and that was behavior change. And so when you start looking at it with adding in this layer about beginning to quantify expected behavior changes by quantifying the interest with, at-risk activities, and this framework, it kind of brings these different pieces that are kind of in isolation into a much more larger context. That's going to give, adds to the predictions of, wavering ascents and descents, as we were going through it last year. And so one of the things that, we look at is around meaningful signals, and what is the data collected from both traditional and non-traditional sources, and how do you provide new perspectives on that? And so that's a holistic viewpoint, and by embracing metrics that matter to drive performance. And so as data and technology continues to drive performance through more relevant, impactful experiences, but also that agility. So we're focusing on the goals to deliver operational efficiencies for the business, but then also being able to increase value for the customer. And so it's been accelerated, but I think that when you look at customer engagement, right, about 80% of customer engagement efforts utilize data today. However, only about 30% are roughly able to create more relevant experiences based off of that data. So how do you actually take it in a way that will think about a digital transformation with data specifically, but then also being able to enable it and enhance it across the business? And so ultimately being able to bring and deliver value through this greater understanding, alignment, and actioning of the data, for effective decision-making.
Oh, excellent. Okay, that was great. Throughout the ages, customer experience has been paramount to business. I think we all know that. It's always not love your customer, serve your customer, so forth. How can a company transform and create an evolved customer experience? And how can we leverage technology, processes, and partnerships to do that?
All right, Fred, you want to take it, Rachel, or you want me to take it?
I can give a first shot at it and get at least a conversation started. Does that work?
Yes.
So I think if companies haven't already, they need to start by stepping back from what they've been doing and questioning everything they've done in their customer experience, because with all the changes in the last 2 years, a lot of times they've been so busy just keeping the business running, doing those things, that they haven't really been able to take a look at what their customer really wants. And I think that takes bringing in customers to the story and working with key customers. Most companies have a loyalty program. Most companies have an ability to find those. And I think they need to actually step back and bring those in and take a fresh look at what their consumer and their customers, and that needs to be a broad brush. It needs to be baby boomers all the way to, through millennials and even to Gen Zs and things, to get a different perspective on what their people really want to do. And then as they try to look at technologies and digital transformation, they can ensure that some of those key things come out. Too often we see just a knee-jerk reaction. Well, I'm going to put a chatbot up there because I want to try to reduce the number of calls. And in some cases, that can cause more problems and frustrations than it can solutions if it's not done right. Whereas if you've really worked with customers and heard what they deal and see with, you can take a softer look of having a chatbot that's available for quick answers on standard things, but really easy right on it one button push that says, I really need to talk to a person, and reduce the frustration of how do I get out of the chatbot into a person, or those kind of things. So I think that human perspective needs to be captured early on and now, before you really start to make those transformations. And then really with customer, as you're doing it digitally, you need to do it in a lot of small bites. So it fits agile work perfectly to just start making small changes and move things. You don't have to build a whole new customer engagement and then do it. You can release it in 100 small bites and those kind of things from my perspective. Turn it back to you guys.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Fred, on that one. I think it's very important for companies to understand what customer needs are first, right? So before you understand that, you can really transform that experience. And companies that are in, let's take a couple industries, for example. If they're in manufacturing, if they are into clothes making, it is like whatever the industry they are in. Sometimes, actually, I would say most of the times, companies don't really have all the expertise to, one, get all the customer data, to analyze it, to understand their behavior, and then to define strategy to basically enhance that experience or transform that experience. And the reason behind that is this company specifically, they are a manufacturing company. That's what they are good at, and that's what they do. And they are really they're really doing good at it. So that's why companies really come to advisors like Avasant here, because really these companies cannot do it alone. So what happens, advisors, again, like we do, we basically come in and start helping them to define their current or past experience customer needs, and what the changing world is, how industry is changing based on all the data we have and all of that, and help them define the strategy to get from point A to point B. And then from there, basically building that relationship and trust between companies, advisors, and then using partners along the way, support service providers and partners along the way to help enable this strategy and drive that to execution. That's what we have seen so far.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that, focusing on the customer is not new.
Yeah.
There is an issue with audio or something here. Focusing on the customer isn't new, but experience is a broad topic. The customer experience has been elevated from a work stream to a new way of working that's really backed by the C-suite. And so when you're going through a digital transformation, it begins with the experience, and it requires a holistic approach to help drive business success. And so this is going to come out through daily employee activities, through prioritizing with purpose, with innovation, by empowering employees to feel accountable for those customer outcomes, by unlocking those efficiencies that can be reinvested to driving continuous performance. And I think that that's a big mind shift, because now when you start building it onto it, that by delivering great experience, we typically find that you're able to actually reduce the cost to serve customers, sometimes in cases of 30%. It can also sometimes reduce development costs, in some cases even up to 50%. And that brings a faster time to market, and moving beyond the belief that it's just like around different touch points where experiences start and end, but actually it's all throughout. So for that program I was mentioning earlier, they needed to make the shift for e-commerce transformation. It was at the top. It was highly visible transformation project. Had a significant executive stakeholder involvement. And so it was driven by the business, in this case, rather than technology, like a technology upgrade or replacement approach. And so the focus was on target market segments, persona driven, focus on aligning nearly a dozen siloed organizations to create a much more seamless experience. And so that executive commitment and that strong business technology partnership is what really helped move it to be able to reach those outcomes. And I think that when we look at customer experience, we're looking at every interaction with the brand, customers, employees, and bringing a need and an expectation for how quickly or easily that outcome will be met. And so we do find that customer experience, when you're looking at it from the industry, companies that have that customer centricity that are built in within the organization will typically outperform. Research shows that they're outperforming on the S&P index by 228% over 10 years. And so it's this customer obsession and the customer obsessed organizations that have embraced the business of experience, not just the customer experience, that is proven to make it possible through driving notable commercial impact when you make a positive impact on people.
Excellent. So we've talked now a lot about the how, okay? But I know we talked about some of the inhibitors, but what else, what are the other challenges? I think probably Rachel, Fred, and Sharon can all answer this, is what are the other challenges along the way that providers are facing, technologists are facing when they're trying to present it? What are some of the other challenges and inhibitors that you can see from your experience?
I'll take that question first again. So a couple of things that is pretty obvious to all of us is employees and staffing, right? So every company is basically fighting over the talent to hire, and every company is actually experiencing the talent issues in the market. That's one of the big things, because for any program, digital transformation included, you need people to execute that program and digital transformation. So hiring is one of the big issues that we see in the market so far. The other one I would say would be technology capabilities that companies currently have. Are they set to support the new digital transformation journey? Are they legacy systems? Are they need to be upgraded? They need to be wiped out and rebuilt again? So those are the questions, or those are the challenges basically need to be addressed before embarking this technology journey. And then the last one I will add to that is working remotely, how you structure the team, how you get them collaborate in a meaningful way to support the strategy, support the programs that the companies are executing. Yes, flexibility is a big thing, but how you can help employees take ownership and deliver based on the strategy, knowing that go-to-market timing is one of the key factors, right? So it's not like traditional waterfall methodology that you just collect requirements for 8 months and then deliver for next 9 months, right? Like Fred mentioned, being agile and how you get employees to understand that concept and how you can get them excited about it and just work in that fashion, knowing that they don't really see each other in the office. Like it was different when everybody was in the office, they were kind of talking and changing, collaborating, but getting them to that point remotely is obviously a challenge. Most companies have figured it out so far in the last 2 years because we were just forced to do that. But those are one of the things that needs to be discussed and challenges that need to be addressed before starting any of this programs.
We have
This
another
Fred, I got a couple of
question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Fred. We have a question.
No, go ahead, Adriana.
This is a good one. Very relevant for right now. Are we seeing any impacts from the Great Resignation on how companies are approaching this digital transformation? Considering this resignation is indicated to grow wider in 2022, including at leadership and management levels.
I'll take that one. It ties into what I was going to say even before. I think the Great Resignation is truly impacting every company, everybody I talk to, friends that are CIOs or VPs of operations or anything, they are seeing it across all their business. And people are rethinking what their careers look like that. And it is impacting how you do these things. I think a couple of things can help get through this. I think partnerships with great providers like HCL and other parties, you cannot do these transformations on your own. 25 years ago, I took on as a CIO some initiatives and things, and we did them internally, and it was there. But the number of technologies, the complexities of it, and the speed that we need to move at now to come through with that and come out of the transformation with successes and build momentum is too important, that you've got to have those partnerships and those things. And I think the fear that people have when change is coming is another motivator to the great resignation, that people are uncomfortable with what changes companies are doing. Are we trying to digital transform to eliminate people, or are we doing it to increase customer? The story needs to be told, and the why needs to be a big part of the CEO all the way down through an organization when you're taking one of these on.
That's a great point. And just a quick thing I'll add to Fred, what you just mentioned, like people and their fear of change. I remember a project that I used to manage a couple of years ago. That was one of the questions when we started talking about AI. The first question some of the employees asked, so will I have a job after AI was implemented, right? So the fear of that and how we can work with them to understand it, where maybe it would be reskilling and retraining and all of that, but that's a big factor. Sometimes company kind of overlook, but that basically is one of the key success factors on any program, like especially in digital transformation, and how it's going to impact employees, not outside the company, right? So employees and customers both.
So back in the day, I'm sure Fred can relate to this as well. When we were trying to pitch something to our executives, they would say things like, you know what, we've been operating like this for a long time and we're making a lot of money. Okay, so, and if I'm going to spend this money, why don't I spend it in marketing and advertising and those things that can really give me a much more immediate return on my investment, right? So that's the story we used to get. So I think that there are still some of those executives out there today. And how do you get them to buy in? Is there any way that you can get them to buy into this thing? Because it's a complex project, obviously.
Libby, I'll take the first shot because I'm the oldest person in the room, I think.
No, I think I am, Fred, but we'll talk.
Okay. We might be tied. They're definitely, that was exactly, your scenario is exactly what most executives and most people I worked with for the last 30 years, plus years on that stuff. I think there's been a lot of change as newer executives have come up, but I believe there are still a lot of very conservative, very fiscally minded execs that want to just, hey, we're doing well, we're not doing this, those kind of things. I think, and the key thing that I've done for a long time is get them to give you a small chunk to take on that you can prove a difference in. Don't try to boil the ocean and tell, well, we're going to digital, end to end this and this. Try when you've got that resistance and they're not on board. Start with something small, a small piece in the business, and say, look, we can automate and we can digitize and we can take this little area. It's manageable. It's a bite-sized chunk. We can have a small team, a few people in the business and a few people in technology, take that on and find where you can get a small win. Because if you can go back in a short period of time, three months or so, and show a difference, and we change this, and we have smoothed out this, and we make something as simple as we now process accounts payable documentation electronically and it flows through for approvals, and we get, we haven't eliminated any people, but look, we've done this, and we can now grow the company without adding any more people. You start those good stories of where you are, and then you bite just a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger to where you then get the momentum going with those executives that are concerned, because if they see payback, they will get on board if they can see some value and some payback.
Yep. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I'll just add one quick thing. I mean, Fred just really covered a lot of things I was going to really talk about too. So doing like pilots to prove that the project is a success, how you're going to help, how this pilot is basically going to help the company. And then the bottom line is that CEO, the board they have a vision, right? To take company from one point to another point, to move it forward, to grow it to whatever that vision is. and all really the sales pitch is basically going to be much easier when you show how you're aligned with that vision and how you're going to enable the company to get to that point, right? Whether it's digital transformation, any other project that we are doing, but all they really want to know is that, okay, these are everything that you're pitching, the technology, the project, the pilots, and all of that. This is what I'm going to get at the end, and this is how it's going to enable me to get to my vision better, faster, or at a whatever point. So it is much like building trust and relationship between executives, and also aligning with the vision overall. And that's, again, at the end, that's what CEOs and board really cares about, right? How they're going to grow the company and how your project is going to help me to get to that point.
Adriana, do we have time for a couple more questions?
Can I add to that?
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I think that there also is a bit of a provocative reframe on this about buy-in, because I actually think it's more about belief. And believers feel that there's a purpose and that they're part of that purpose. And I think that's an important critical shift, because you need to be able to adapt to the change faster and better. And it also helps the organization, because, man, you're not spending weeks and months and sometimes years trying to convince a team that the upcoming change is the right thing to do. And it's that agile, nimble thinking to be able to iterate and evolve. It promotes velocity and adaptability, but also being able to adjust as you go along, to build the right things that are solving the right problems, to bring the right impacts to the business and to customers. And I think it's a bit of a slight mindset shift, but I do find it's important to help to strategically align, whether it be with clients or whether it be with internal stakeholders, to partner with them to help set a vision that will enable to be able, the executive team or the on the ground teams to be able to take them along on that journey.
So you're saying make them believers. It's our job to make them believers.
Yeah.
It's our job to make them believers.
So Libby, we do have time for one more question. Then
Okay.
That would be great to do our lightning round of key takeaways from today. So the question is, while we are leveraging end user data across multiple sources, how do you ensure that the end users understand or are aware that their data is being utilized and monetized for transformation? It's a good one.
It's a good one. Yeah, I mean, there are rules out there, right? CCPA, GDPR. I mean, those are they're hard and hard rules and policies that are in place, and customers now they can go and request to see where their data is, how it's being utilized, and if they want to opt out of it, they can totally do that. But again, comes to it's company's responsibility, right, to how they're going to treat that data. And that's why I'll get into this big cybersecurity, data security concept, which is a big challenge right now for companies, because data is behind almost every project that all these companies are doing, and how secure that data is within the company environment, and how they're going to treat that, and how they share it and how they use it. There's a lot of thinking that will need to go behind that. But again, customers have abilities now to make some of that decision for the data that they share online or any other sort of platform.
This is Fred, I guess I'll add a little bit to that. I think companies, and we're seeing a lot of pushback, with Google and Meta, Facebook, and those things about what they're doing. I think every company needs to up their game around the sharing of, in normal English language on their websites, what they are doing, whether it's with just traffic information and things, or if you're logged in and that stuff. And clearly, if you have a login, it needs to be very clear and it needs to be very readable, not one of those boxes that pops up with a bunch of legal language about what they're going to do with the data. It needs to be, user-friendly information that's shared about it, with the ability for them to opt in and opt out in that level, and to be much more transparent than what we are. The rules that Shren mentioned are key, and they are important, but I don't think most American businesses are really pushing to the level of transparency that they need to.
Yeah, here, Fred. It's that transparency. Back in computer science days, we called it, visibility of system status. And it's a really key heuristic. And one of those items that I typically, I find clients infuse into those design principles early on to be able to have that transparency to the customer. But then also allowing them to opt in or opt out, so that there is, control over how that data is being used. That is a bit of a little bit of a shift, but it is something that needs to, because you're breaking the brand trust if you're breaking that moment of not giving that. And so it helps, it will eventually, if customers feel that the trust is not there, the brand starts to degrade. And so it's important to bring those two together to give that visibility of system status.
Okay, Libby, we might have time for one more question. I just keep getting more, so we might want to just answer them.
Okay.
Okay, so this one. We're still running a lot of legacy systems on our back end. What is the best way to do some of what you're talking about, short of implementing all new systems?
I mean, this Fred, I'll comment first. I mean, everybody had, other than say, a brand new company or startup, is dealing with a number of legacy solutions. They are there. A lot of times they've worked well. So there hasn't been a motivation to say we've got to bite off and move those things. A full assessment of what they really are and how they work and how critical they are to what you're going to try to do with your digital transformation is a must up front. And a lot of times it's good. I think Shren mentioned earlier, get an outside opinion, bring someone in that's going to give you a view of looking at those legacies, and are there ways to modernize them without having to rip and replace, because rips and replacement, when you get into those, I clearly can relate. There are certain boat anchors that are going to be a challenge down the road and can't be an early part of your transformation, but other ones can probably be worked around and modernized, and putting web front ends on mainframe transactional processing things, depending upon where they fit into the landscape. So understanding the landscape well is critical. And then I think looking at how you're going to take this transformation on and how you can work around. There will be times as you lay out your strategy and roadmap that there will have to be some rip and replaces that are going to be difficult, expensive, and time consuming to do in that process. But if you figure out the right times to where they are, you can make progress on a number of fronts while you're looking at some of those bigger boat anchors.
Okay, if not, I think we've got enough time to do a lightning round. Again, we're going to get a response from each of you regarding what were your key takeaways from today? What did you learn? And what should the audience take away from this? So maybe let's start with Libby.
Okay. Well, I think my key takeaways from this is, first, that you have to know your audience. You have to know what emotions are going to create the spark, whether or not it's your customer, whether or not it's your executive team that you're trying to sell, or whether or not it's the employees that are going to have to deal with this. And I think the second thing was something that Fred had said, which rang true to me, was even if you start with the basics, make sure to personalize the digital experience every step of the way. So you can have a small chunk project that's going to buy you a lot, and it's not going to be expensive, but it will really give you some growth, and it will make the executives much more believers, to Rachel's point, that they become believers. So they're really my two key takeaways from today.
Shren?
Yeah. A couple of things. One, Rachel and actually Fred, I think mentioned too. So, culture change in the company is one of the big and key factors for digital transformation. If employees are not on board, if the mindset is not there, they are not aligned with the vision, that's going to be pretty challenging to execute any sort of transformation strategy. And the other thing is securing the data from what Rachel mentioned, system status to now the data. And then how companies basically need to be transparent to their customers and how they're going to utilize data, how they're going to sell that data, who they're going to share that data with, and how, and Rihanna, to your point, how they're going to monetize that data. So that's a big thing that companies are doing, right? Collecting data and using them to generate revenue, basically. Being open and transparent about it and helping them understand in a more customer user-friendly fashion is one thing that really we need to move forward to. Not a lot of companies are there, but hopefully that's down the line and coming soon.
Rachel.
Oh, so many. I would say it's kind of, there's a couple of things. One is change isn't easy, which, we talked about earlier, but I think it's also a big key takeaway for me is about the business and talent readiness. And that, as many companies, they want to start transformation, but they usually find that the business doesn't have the skills or resources needed. And so what does that mean? And how do you get an understanding of both the business and the IT readiness? And so having the right talent is essential. And I know it's really hard in this market, but having the right, but also looking at how can you actually retain your current staff, have the right practices that let the talent, the teams work effectively. We find that highly structured and slow traditional processes may not necessarily work for digital. And so there's but at the same time, there's a talent gap, and redefining individuals' roles to include more skills and competencies that are going to be needed to help support that business transformation. And not just for today, but for the future. And it's a critical component in order to help retain people.
Fred?
I'll go last, I guess. So I think key call outs or takeaways, I think I have heard and gathered. I think a lot of great information has been shared. These things are all encompassing. These are big changes for companies. Everybody's got to get in the boat. Everybody is going to be impacted. If everybody isn't, there will be less successful transformations. And I think the key is that, everybody is in and everybody is driving toward the same thing. I think the tech is really there in a lot of these cases. There's great technologies out there. There's a lot of scale and things that can be done that we couldn't do 10 years ago from the tech side of it. It's really now about people, process, and how you're going to do it. I think it's key that the people are motivated, they're incentivized, they're going to have fun with this, and that there's key metrics and measures so that all through the journey, progress can be reported on a very rapid basis, that there is change happening and there are good things happening. It's not one of those type of projects where you can say, we're doing this and 3 years later, we're going to wake up and give you the results. You need to be able to monthly, if not quarterly, give people some great metrics and some great progress. Tell the story.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining today. I think we've learned a lot. A special thank you to HCL for being always a great partner for us. We hope that all of our participants enjoyed the conversation. A replay of today's session will be available on our events page and emailed to all attendees shortly. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us at another Avasant Digital Forum soon. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.